the idea is to have those two worlds meet, so you really know how as you're playing, you know how it's being perceived by the other musicians in the audience. When Dave got the call for the Chick Corea band, he just said in passing, "I recommended you to audition for Michel," and I said, "Holy shit!" The biggest compliment you can get on a gig is not, "Hey man, you sounded great." The biggest compliment you can get is the artist saying, "I thought it was a great gig. I played my ass off." And that means I created a place for him where he could play his best.
Hola a todos, hi everyone. What a great connection we have today. We are using the internet in the best possible way because we are connecting people all around the world, expanding the good vibes of music. And talking about good vibes and music, our guest today is the perfect mix of good feelings and good music. He inspired me from the first time I knew about him in the 90s with his touch, his approach, his energy and musicality in every work. From Michel Camilo to Spyro Gyra, from Bill Evans to a great studio career playing drums or recording people in his top-notch studio in the countryside of New York. I'm very happy, folks. Please welcome Mr. Joel Rosenblatt. Hi Joel, how are you?
Hi Juan, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here, Joel. Where are you now and what are you doing these days?
Today I am editing, I'm involved with this project now with a great singer named Porter Carroll, who he's actually one of the background singers for Hall & Oates, and he has his own side project, which is very interesting to me because there's a lot of styles covered. You know, Porter's a couple years older than me. He's a fantastic singer, and he really gives a lot of attention to the old songs with good bridge, you know, melodies and form. So we're doing that. We're updating some of the stuff. We're changing some arrangements. So we've been rehearsing at my studio, and I am doing, after we record, he says, "Can we make some changes, blah, blah, blah." So when you called, I was editing some stuff around.
Great.
So that's what I'm doing today. I'm actually going in tonight to play Hamilton. I sub on that show in New York.
Not a biographical interview, but I would like to say this because it means a lot and it's emotive. In my first days, I only listened to rock and pop, Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, Beatles, and I discovered fusion and then Latin and then jazz because of these next three bands: Chick Corea Electric Band, Michel Camilo Trio and Spyro Gyra. Joel, you didn't play with the Chick Corea band, but you did with Michel Camilo and Spyro Gyra. What a golden age it was for me, and that type of music for the bands, for the music, for the recording label GRP, for the music. Joel, what's your resume in a few words about that period in general and for fusion music?
Well, at the time, you know, Michel Camilo was in the mid 80s. I joined Spyro Gyra in '91, and again, this is before drum machines and you know, that there was, you know, look, at the time when I was in college, and like many young drummers, I was really concerned with, I wanted to be as fast as I could, and you know, my heroes were Vinny and Steve Gadd, and you know. And as most of your viewers probably know, that Weckl and I were roommates.
Yeah.
You know, when he got the Michel Camilo gig, I was all over that. I would go down with him and watch the band and everything. And that was where I was really focusing. Is like, to me, that was, and for a lot of drummers, that was like the gig to have. So I kind of, like, my brain and what I was practicing on was more in that style. So and then obviously I got that gig and I played that for a few years, and the way I met the Spyro guys is it was actually in Spain.
Yes.
I don't remember where, but we opened, Michel Camilo Trio opened for Spyro Gyra, and Tom Schumann heard the band, and we talked and everything, and I stayed in touch with him, and I did a couple of gigs with him, and that led to an audition with Spyro. And you know, it was a different time. I mean, there wasn't a smooth jazz movement then. There wasn't a smooth jazz. I mean, Spyro Gyra was, I'd like to say, they kind of invented, you know, it's instrumental music with saxophone. You know, it didn't have the stigma that it does now. Yeah, I mean, I played for what the music called for at the time. You know, and as the records became more produced and played a lot simpler, it turned more into like a pop gig, and then there's the whole economy thing where the whole thing kind of dried up. Mostly there was so much competition in that style, and we were getting undercut like crazy. And it just became, it didn't become, it was time for me to go for several reasons, you know. But at the time, I mean, you know, again, as a sideman, because I don't write music or anything, my job is just to play the gig the way they want me to, or the best for the time, and that's it. And then that's always moving. That's a moving target, you know.
Thanks for that, Joel. Something that I believe in is if some opportunity appears in your professional life and that involves creativity and good people, never say no. Joel, when you were called for the Michel Camilo audition, recommended by Dave Weckl, the drummer before you in that beautiful chair, days before that audition, you almost say, I am not prepared. Joel, I'm glad you said yes and took that chair. Can you share with us that experience, that audition, your preparation for that, and how it came out?
Yeah, you know, as I said before, I used to go see Michel all the time with Dave, and I knew the music pretty well just by memory, just by watching them. But you know, thinking you know the music and actually playing it is two different things. And when Dave got the call for the Chick Corea band, he just said in passing, I recommended you to audition for Michel. And I said, holy shit. And then like a few days later, Michel called me and said, hey, you know, Dave, and I knew Michel because I met him at the gigs and he knew me, but he never heard me play.
Yeah.
So he said, yeah, so I'd like to hear you, you know, can you come at, you know, blah, blah, blah. And it was like 10 days away.
Wow.
And I was freaking out. I won't lie to you. I was freaking out. I didn't think you know, there's a tune that was in 7, and I could kind of play a groove in 7, but I mean, there's a solo. And I remember as I was walking to the audition, I was thinking of ways to get out, not do it. It was a beautiful day in the spring. It was beautiful outside. I was thinking, all the other jobs I could do instead of going in there and humiliating myself, you know. But I'll tell you what, the 10 days before that, I practiced so, I mean, I cleared my calendar and I worked really, really hard. And, you know, I went in there and I played the best I could. And it was interesting because memorizing the music, I had, especially some of the odd time transitions, in my mind I pictured a different way of them being written. And when I saw the music, it was written differently. That happens a lot, actually. And in fact, when I get charts now that have odd times or odd transitions, I'll write my own bar lines, how I hear the phrasing, not how, you know, or how the computer wrote it, you know what I mean? So basically, like, Michel put this music in front of me and I just ignored it and I played from memory, you know. And I guess he and Anthony Jackson liked enough of what they heard that they started working with me.
That's great.
And then, you know, I got better and, you know, worked on some stuff as I built my confidence and things.
Confidence, what a great topic. The 90s, in my case, were my period of heavy practice routine. Learning, practicing, discovering new music, playing along to Sparrow Yaira and many other great bands. No YouTube, no Google, and talking about practicing, Joel. How was your approach to practicing in your early days? I suppose you were in your 20s with your intense days of practice?
Yes, yep. Well, you know, every musician is going to go through a time where I call it, it's the burn period, where it's all you do. You know, and it's interesting, you know, you're just paying your rent, you know, you just have your gigs. I didn't have any kind of other interests or any money to do anything. And it was just like, and this is what I was really passionate about. And, you know, so it was I could never put in the time that I put in my 20s. I could not put it in now. I just, you know, there's too many other things on my plate, responsibilities. You know, I own a home now, and there's taxes to pay, and there's, you know, it's just, it's a more adult life. So, but back in my 20s, man, that's what I worked on. And the stuff that I worked on, I wasn't practicing like paradiddles and technique and stuff. I was practicing the music I needed to play. So it was just playing the songs, and then whatever patterns I needed to work out, whatever technique that I developed because I was trying to play the songs fluently. I was a practice guy, like, all right, I'm going to sit here for 2 hours and do, you know, set my metronome and play blah, 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 and get my hands. It's like whatever my hands needed to do to try and play the phrase in my mind, that's what I worked on. And then your technique develops, it follows along.
Wander around in the lost and found. There's always hell right here on the ground. Wander around in the lost and found.
Tom Kennedy, about practicing, told me that he needed a musical reason to practice. A new song, a difficult part, but something with a very practical and musical meaning.
Right.
Are you in that type of concept now, Joel?
Yeah, actually, I talked with Tom about this a while ago, and the same thing. I'm not a practice person. I take gigs that are very challenging in order to work. I just did. I don't know if you know Ed Palermo. He's a saxophone player, arranger in New York City.
Yeah.
And he does a Frank Zappa, King Crimson, Mr. Mister kind of, but he writes it for big band. And it's completely whacked. I mean, it's definitely one of the hardest things I do. I subbed for a drummer named Ray Marchico, who's a great drummer. But again, he called me to do this gig, and I looked at my schedule. I had time to prepare. And I mean, I practice more. Again, it was like for a Michel Camilo thing, because there's not really a lot of rehearsal. Mm-hmm. Again, the reason I took it is because I knew it would put me on the drums.
Yeah.
And so that's my motivation. I'm not going to just practice for maintenance. Unfortunately, I'm not one of those guys.
About practicing and improving with our instrument, what exercise, book page, groove, or something concrete, drumming-wise, meant a before and after in your learning experience? A song, a book, that meant a boost in your learning?
You know, I studied with Gary Chester in my 20s. And that was kind of a turning point for me. His stuff was not really musical. It was more, and I talk about this in my clinics. It's more about developing, you know, your inner clock, which is important, your reading ability, your independence. And when you get that together, it develops your confidence. Confidence is something a drummer needs to have. You know, when people are telling you it's rushing, it's dragging and all that, it's always the drummer's fault. Unless you've been working with a click and you know your time is good, and then you can say, you know, you have the confidence to say, no, this is where the pocket is. So the exercises that Gary was you know, it was just independence. I mean, it's hard to say. There's not, I mean, I worked out of the same books everybody did. Advanced Techniques, the Jim Chapin, the Syncopation book, and there's a million ways, and there's stuff on YouTube. You know, you can play syncopation with your feet. You can do it, you know. It's whatever. I think whatever gets you on the drums and gets your hands moving. And if you can't play something, you know, slow it down till you can, and then just keep playing it and raise the tempo until you play what you want to play. I mean, it's not rocket science.
The first time that we record ourselves practicing our live recordings, it can be a shock listening back to the recording. Did you use to record yourself in order to take notes and get better? And how did you use that information to get better?
Okay, so in the early days we had cassette players, and I would record, and it would be very hard for me to listen to stuff because all I hear was the bad things. But it's important to do. I don't do it enough now. I can't stress how important it is to do that, because it really, you know, there's a disconnect between. I felt like the gig was great. I played really great, and you listen back and it's terrible. But by the same token, you can have, that was the worst gig I've ever played, and you listen back and it sounds amazing. And the idea is to have those two worlds meet, so you really know how as you're playing, you know how it's being perceived by the other musicians in the audience. And that's what we're all working for. Nowadays, because I have the recording studio, and with digital, you can see all the notes. So a lot of the stuff I do for people is with a click, obviously, and all that. I'm playing with either MIDI parts or players who've already played. And I can see where everything lands. Oh, that snare drum is like right on the beat. Oh, my bass drum's pushing. Oh, I went ahead on this fill. And my ears are very, very sensitive now to time. I mean, I have students here where I record them, and I say, you rushed that, and they're not hearing it. You know what I mean? And a couple of my students now, a couple of years later, they hear now. I mean, their ears are getting developed. Basically, I call it, I'm ruining their ears. I'm ruining music for them.
Yeah.
It's very frustrating, but it's satisfying when you see the improvement, but nothing's easy to do. Whatever you do at a high level, nothing is easy. Not even music, could be anything. If anybody, I mean, I could teach somebody to play drums or to get by. That's one of the easiest instruments to learn. To play a simple beat, and a lot of people can do that. But the great analogy for me is, let's say you're trying to lose weight. All right, and let's say you need to lose 30 pounds, all right? The first 10 pounds are going to be way easier than the last 2 pounds. That's like the really, and it's same with music or anything. It's like to get the refinement and to really get at the highest level, it takes a lot more work.
Joel, in your clinics, you say that the three most important aspects in order to be a good drummer are concentration, coordination, and our internal clock. Some tips about how to develop our internal clock, being drummers, bass players, or any player. Specific exercises or routines for that?
I got all that from the Gary Chester thing. And developing your inner clock really is just playing with the damn click track. You play with the click track, and you keep playing with the click track. You do different tempos, and if you have the luxury of a recording system, you see, basically you have to be able to hear. And this is the inner clock. Like, in other words, you're playing, and you think you're playing with the click track, and you look at the screen, you say, "Oh, I'm ahead."
Yeah.
So as you're looking at it, you have to start hearing that you're ahead. All right, and then then I'll do an exercise where I'll purposely try and play behind the click. All right, and then I'll look at that and I'll see, okay, so that's what it feels like to play behind the click. So the idea is you just have to keep playing with it so it becomes your friend. We talk about if you're really on the click, you can't hear it while you're playing. Like especially if you're playing like a 4-on-the-floor pop tune. Sometimes I'm in recording and I'm playing, I'm thinking, wow, I forgot to put the click on. and it's there, but I'm just playing right on top of it, and that's a great feeling. And you develop that, once you do hours and hours and hours playing with a click track. When you're not playing with a click, just your muscle memory, how that feels at that tempo, it's just gonna be easier. It just takes hours.
About learning from others, Joel, we need sometimes some type of impact, an experience, even a bad experience, an earthquake to make us evolve and improve. It can be a friend, a record, an advice from someone, or sharing your room with Mr. Dave Weckl. What do you remember about Dave, the first time you saw him playing, about those days? Was that in a jazz camp, school?
That was college. It was college, yeah. So I remember very well because it was a very traumatic experience. So I got to give you a little background for me. So I started playing drums when I was 13, and I was very good at a young age. I had a lot of natural talent. There was nobody else really playing, and I was playing in my high school, and I went to all-state. In America, we have like these little states, like everybody from the high schools in one state audition, and then they may have an all-state band, and then if you do that, you can go on to the national, whatever, So I was in the all-region band, I was in the all-state band, and my ego was like huge. I was, and then I went to University of Bridgeport, and I got into the A band as a freshman, which didn't happen very often. So I was like, well, of course, I'm the best there is. There's nobody better. And then in the middle of my first semester, my freshman year, my sax player friend that was in the band said, I heard there's this new kid transferring in from St. Louis. He's supposed to be really great. And I said, yeah, whatever, I didn't care. And I remember it was Christmas. We were on Christmas break, because the way in America you have the fall semester, you have Christmas break, and then you have the spring. So I had gone home for the holidays, and then I came back a few days early, and there was snow on the ground everywhere, a lot of snow. And my sax player said that new drummers, he's at the music building, he's practicing, you should walk over and check it out. So I said, great. So I start walking, and my dorm is about 100 meters from the music building. And if I don't know where you are in Spain, but if there's snow on the ground, it's very quiet. It's a very sound-absorbing, dead quiet.
Yeah.
So I'm walking across the parking lot, and I faintly hear drums. And as I'm walking closer, I start slowing down, and I'm really hearing what's going on. And I said, well, I'm done.
Wow.
I mean, I'd never heard anything like that. And he was playing at a very high level at 18 years old. And so that was like a wake-up call. I mean, right away I was demoted to the B band, and it's like a real lesson in like, this is what happened if you don't do your work. I mean, I was fortunate but unfortunate enough in my early years to be the best. And that's never the most productive place to be. You want to be the worst guy in your band, because you're forced, if they'll have you, because then you're forced to play up to their level. That's how it was when I was with Michel and Anthony Jackson. I mean, they took me under their wing and were patient with me while they drew me up there.
That's a real motivation, to be always with people better than you. And if you want to keep the job, that's the best motivation in the world.
It's the best. You have to find people that are willing, good players want to play with good players.
Absolutely.
So it's hard to find. You can't be like so far below them that they're not going to play with you.
Yeah.
But, you want somebody maybe a little more experienced, has a little different rhythmic vocabulary, so you get a little inspired.
That's great information, Joel. Thank you. We all need references to follow, especially in our early days, to copy people. Maybe Benny, maybe Jeff Porcaro, absorb his concepts, then go to another. What players or artists did you try to copy or play along to? Weckl was into Bad Rich, for example, and then as Steve Gadd. What players did you try to emulate in the good way?
Yeah, it was definitely, for me, I was not a Buddy guy. I mean, I knew who Buddy Rich was, obviously. I went to see him when I was actually, my father took me to see the Buddy Rich band, but I was still playing trumpet at the time. I was like 12 or 13, and I remember that Buddy Rich made a huge impression on me. And that's about the time I kind of switched. But definitely the biggest influence on me was Steve Gadd. I tried to copy all that stuff, and then later on Vinny, but Vinny was so far over my head. I didn't understand what he was doing, but Steve was way more accessible. Steve Jordan also in the early days. I kind of like hyper focused on Steve Gadd, which is never a good thing to do. But I was so interested in him. But when I was studying with Randy Jones, he turned me on to a little more Elvin and Max Roach, who learning to play melodies on the drums. But the biggest influence for me, for sure, was Steve Gadd.
Any record that you used to play along to over and over, a record or song that you remember?
Ben Sidran's 7 Steps to Heaven.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 steps to heaven. 5, 6, 7, 8, see them pass.
Because Steve does a solo, and it's the first time I heard cowbell on the on the drum set, and that has all his trademark licks in it, that one tune, and then I follow whatever came out, whatever came out, and actually later on I also want to mention John Robinson with Rufus and Shaka. I mean that was Anthony Jackson. And again, that's another thing to bring me to Michel, Camilo. I couldn't believe I was sitting next to Anthony Jackson, who played on all that Rufus and Shaka stuff.
Wow.
Even though I was playing different music, completely different, but it was like, it was scary.
There are so many things that we can learn from others who don't play our instrument, but that affects directly in our playing. What concrete lesson or experience from others, non-drummers, made you a better player, a better musician?
That is a great thing. I was happy to see that in your question, because all my students, not that I have a lot, but I always tell them, I said, I don't want you to come back to me until you take a lesson with a bass player and you take a lesson with a piano player. And a lot of it, it's like hire a bass player for an hour and say, I just want to play jazz for an hour. And then ask the bass player, like, how does my time feel to you? And have him say, well, I feel like you're pushing, I feel like, and then work it. If you want to play Latin music, hire a piano player who knows how to play a montuno. Play a montuno and ask him how it feels. He knows what it's supposed to feel like. He may not know what to tell you to do, but he'll tell you if it's feeling good. Obviously, if you're going to take a lesson with somebody, you're going to record the whole thing so you can hear his comments. You can hear how you're playing with him. So like if you just play a blues and then he says, well, you feel like you're a little ahead. All right, and then so you go back to that recording and you listen to where he's playing it and where you're playing it and see if you can agree with that or understand it. It's about developing your ears. I think what another musician will comment on, he's not going to comment on your technique or anything. The only thing and the only valuable thing is him to comment on how it feels to play with you.
Absolutely.
And then it's up to you to like figure out how to make him happier for the next time. It's like, and listen to what he's saying. Feels like you're rushing the turnarounds. It's just, and it's, it's so, you can't put your finger on it. It's that's what makes us all different drummers. We could all be playing the same music. It's going to feel totally different. Not that it's bad. It's just going to be different. It's my feel. So it's very subjective. And you know, there's no drummer who's right for every gig. You know, I mean, if you want to learn how to play pop, play with a pop bass player that you love. If you want to play jazz, hire an acoustic player. You know, it's and what you hear is going to affect how you play, and that's really what you want to work on. Is like if I'm going to play a jazz gig, I'm bringing my 18-inch bass drum and my high-pitched toms and a jazz ride cymbal, because when I hear those sounds, it makes me play a certain way. I can play bebop on a 22-inch with a hole in the front head and a pillow. It doesn't feel right. So sound is very important to how you're playing. And again, the bass player is going to tell you, or the piano player is going to tell you how it sounds to him. I play with Bill Evans, and he loves to do like just tenor and drums alone. And that's another thing, but again, that's something else. How does it feel? I mean, we just fool around, but you know, that's a very popular jazz device. Is like, you know, everybody's burning, and then it's just like saxophone and drums, and you're blowing together. So you know, if you got a great horn player who's up for that, it's a workout for both players. It's a workout for the saxophone. It's a workout for the drummer, because you're constantly interacting, and it's usually at a high level. You know, do that. Like, anytime you can play with other cats, it's way better than playing by yourself. And that's always a great perspective, because again, drumming, for most drummers, you know, it's not a solo instrument. You know, you can play solo piano, there's melody and harmony you can do, but drums, I think, sound best as a complementary instrument, you know. And so we work with other musicians and everything, and it's important to have that dialogue. And I love to hear what people think about how I'm playing with them and what they're feeling, if it's feeling comfortable. I heard a saying a long time ago, which I live by, and it's that the biggest compliment you can get on a gig is not, "Hey man, you sounded great." The biggest compliment you can get is the artist saying, "I thought it was a great gig. I played my ass off." And that means I created a place for him where he could play his best.
Let's talk about working in the studio. From a sound engineer, producer point of view, what aspects do you value the most in a drummer? Apart of being musical, playing for the song, and not showing off, of course, what do you value the most in a drummer, Joel?
Drummer's got to be flexible. In other words, you know, deal with what's there. You got to understand how to get a good sound of the drums. If you're bringing your own drums, you got to know how to tune them. They got to be the right drums for the song. You gotta be on time. You got all those things. And an interesting one is you have to be able to balance the kit within yourself. In other words, the snare drum is not 20 times as loud as the toms, or the bass drum is too loud and everything else. You're hitting the cymbals too loud, or you know, it's just so you look at the instrument, even though there's 10 mics on the drums, you're looking at the instrument as one. All those components, the cymbals, the toms, is one instrument. Knowing how to balance that, what it is. I mean, that's what I try and do when I go to a session. If I'm producing a drummer, I want it to be about like what part or something. I don't want to say, can you take the snare drum, stop buzzing? It's too much resonance in the floor tom. It doesn't match everything else. That's something a drummer should have already. Get his sound together.
About bass and drum connection, what are the keys, in your opinion, to create a good foundation for the song or the composition?
It depends on the style of music. There's some styles of music where you want the bass drum and the bass to be tight. Other times you want the bass drum and the bass to have a conversation. There's some musicians that when I sit down, I play with, it feels effortless. You know, some musicians, no matter how I play, it never feels comfortable. And that doesn't mean anybody's good or bad. It's just finding people that you're compatible with. It's a combination of having vocabulary, similar vocabulary. This is where going back to the Gary Chester thing is I'm not thinking about playing, the technique of playing. My ears are all open to what's happening around me, and I can respond. So it all will boil down to you got to listen, and your ears have to be available to listen to other musicians, not just yourself. You don't want to be, while you're playing, like, how am I rushing? Am I dragging? What is this? You don't want to be focusing on that. That should be internal and unconscious. While you're playing, you want to be listening what's happening around you and be able to respond to dynamics, rhythm, little motifs that are coming up. That's what you need to be doing.
What I've learned through the years about recording in the studio is that the bass guitar is not enough for me. In order to create the groove, I need more information, maybe the guitar melody, the arpeggio, a synth pad, a voice, and that changes the groove in a better direction.
Yeah, no, that's right, and that brings me to something too, is a lot of times now when people send me stuff to record, I could be the first one on there. So it could be just me and a click, or me with like a MIDI bass part. And I always ask the person, is there any way I can be the last one? Because there's been a lot of projects where it's like I just play with the basic track, just a bass and a MIDI keyboard and stuff, and then the solo's on there, and I think, well, if I knew that was going to be there, I would have played different. And if I knew, I would have changed something, and it's frustrating. The best recording for me is when I get everything, the solos, and I'm the last guy. So it's exactly what you're saying. I play the best when I have all the information in my ears.
So it's kind of complementing his bass drum, his bass line. So slow, it sounds like this. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Get it, honey, I can provide. The atmosphere is warm, I want you to come inside. Don't wanna be saying that you should have. You got the flavor, I got the sugar. So would you get with the vibe? Like when the Jackson 5 said, shake your body down to the ground. Like this, shake it to the ground. Call you up, honey, please pick up the phone.
About your instructional material, your play-alongs, tutorials, available in your website. Tell us, how does it work?
Well, all the stuff I have is on playalongjazz.com, which is a website that's run by my good friend Vinny Valentino. And then, in fact, I'm working on one now, not the one you heard when you called me, but I have to play another tune for him. So I keep feeding. Some of them are complicated, some of them are not. Play-alongs are great. And I realize now, today's day and age, there's so few gigs for people. That's why all these play-alongs are so popular. And they are great. The problem with the play-alongs is after 2 or 3 times, you have it memorized. The solos are memorized, all the parts are memorized, and then there is no more interaction. And what drummers and musicians need now is knowing how to interact with other musicians. You never get that from a play-along. A play-along is going to develop your technique and your time and all that. It's not going to develop your musicianship. In fact, I believe it's going to hurt your musicianship. The musicianship comes with playing with other musicians, not playing with a static tune that, it's like when I was a kid and I was playing with a record, and I was playing along with the drummer. That's great. But then if you try and play that tune without the recording, guys, it's going to all fall apart because you don't know how to do that. I got to tell you a quick story. Do I have a quick time for a quick story?
Yes, of course.
So years and years ago, this kid came to me and he wanted to take a lesson. And the first thing I always say is, well, let me sit down and just play a little bit. Let me just get an idea of your level. And he said, well, I have a cassette. I've been playing along with the Dave Weckl contemporary one. That's his first one. It was actually on cassette. And I said, that's great. I have that cassette here. I'll put it on. So I put it on and he starts playing and he panics. He goes like, what's going on? I said, what do you mean? This is what you play. He said, yeah, but where are the drums? So he had been practicing with the side with Dave. Hey, he never turned it over.
Wow. So
he's playing and in his headphones, he's hearing back Dave Weckl. He thinks he's great.
Wow.
He did. It was unbelievable. even if he was together, it's just it's a lot of fun. I mean, I do it too, but it's not going to develop your musicianship.
That story remembers me another one from myself. The first time I play along to music, I was playing to a Deep Purple record, maybe made in Japan, and I said to myself, man, why the hell am I not the drummer in Deep Purple?
Right.
Man, why not?
That's right. I play the shit out of that, man. They got nothing on me.
About life on the road and touring. With so many months away from your home, traveling all around the world on those years of heavy touring with Español or with other bands, how do you keep in shape physically and playing wise?
So back when I was touring a lot, I was young and I had a lot of big metabolism, so it wasn't a problem. I was just, you know, I was having fun and playing music. I mean, it was a dream, you know. Nowadays, well, let's address the practicing on the road. I can't practice. As you already know, I'm not like a practice pad in my hotel room. And the gigs were practice. Just playing, that's how I kept in shape. And that was part of my problem also, is why I felt so stagnant in Spirogyra, because we were working a lot and I had no time to play with other players, and we were playing the same 12 tunes every night, and I was like, it's not feeding me. So that's one of the reasons I left too, is I wanted more stimulation. But nowadays, I mean, I'm trying to eat much better. You know, you go to the doctor now and you get, you know, you find out you're getting to be an old guy. Your body's not what it used to be. So you have to make modifications. I mean, I go to the gym and I try and eat well. And I'm not touring so much, not nearly as much as I used to. So that hasn't been a problem. But, you know, you really have to, I think being a rounded person makes you a rounded musician. Especially as you get older, it's like having other interests and getting away from the drums for a while makes me appreciate when I come back and play.
Joel, you offer online drum tracks for people wanting you in their albums, remote recordings. So if we live in Mexico, Germany or Spain, we can have you in our records. Tell us, how does it work?
Basically, I usually like to ask for stems. I generally don't like to have like a stereo wave of everything except the drums, because I like to do my own mixes. You know, sometimes I want to hear the bass louder than everything else, or so I ask for stems. Let me have the bass separate. Let me have the piano separate. You know, it depends, and this is a conversation I would have. The first thing I do is I say, send me an MP3 of the whole song. Let me see if I want to do it, if it's something that I think I could do, you know. Once that happens, then I'll say, well, here's what I want, blah, blah, blah. And then I will record, and I will send however they want it back, waves, and I will send them my tracks dry, but I will phase correct them and have them pre-EQ'd. I had a bad experience early on where I just sent everything flat to them, and then they didn't know what to do with it. It was terrible, you know, when the thing came out. So I try and take as much control, and I've actually gotten some mix sessions, because when I have the stems, I'm kind of like mixing. I mix my drums and I EQ the bass or the vocal, whatever, and I sent them back an MP3 for them to approve, and they're going like, "Oh my God, this sounds amazing. Will you just mix the song?" So sometimes that happens as well too.
That's great. So folks, have Joel Rosenblatt in your albums. Check out the links through his website. That's great. Joel, Joel, we are finishing. I think that the location of your studio, Cliffsound Studios, in the countryside of New York, is not there just for a chance. Any hobby or activity you like to do apart of music?
Too many. I'm into, you know, the other thing I've been trying to do is you know, when you're young, you think you can do this forever. And because I'm not a writer, I'm not a music writer, I don't really get royalties. So pretty much everything I do, I have any money I earn, it's with the drums and the drumsticks in my hands. And I know that I'm not going to want to do this when I'm 80 years old. And maybe I'll want to, but I won't be able to. So I'm trying to plan for my future. What I've been up to now is, it's just going to sound weird, but I've been buying cars. I'm very into Porsches, so I have a few Porsches that are valuable and are growing in value, and that's kind of my retirement plan. And I hope to continue to do that. I've been like buying and flipping, getting better ones, and you know, so that I'm trying to plan like when I can no longer do this or unable to, that I'm not going to be destitute, you know. And that's a real thing. I mean, there's a lot of people that I idolized when I was growing up, and then you see these GoFundMe or these accounts because they're sick and they never plan for the future, and they didn't take care of that business, and it's very sad to me, and I just don't want to be one of those guys.
Joel, what's next? What are you doing in the near future? Mixing, touring, recording? Tell us.
Yeah, I still tour. You know, I'm kind of now sort of a member with Special Effects. I'm actually leaving next week for a few days in Florida, and then in January we're on the West Coast for a week. And you know, in town, I mean, I play with, you know, Frank Bali. I played with him a few months ago. I still sub on Blood, Sweat, and Tears. You know, I mean, I'm not in a band. You know, I'm Mr. Freelance now. And I have a stack of music that's like I can't even, I have so much music from bands that I play with. In fact, one of my goals for next year, my New Year's resolution, is to buy a giant iPad and get all that music on the iPad, because I have file cabinets of music. And some bands I don't play with for a year, and then they call me back. I got to pull the music out, and you know.
Joel, it's been a pleasure talking to you from Spain to New York. It seems magic, but it's reality. Best of luck on the road, in your studio, family, everything.
Thank you, Juan, and I'll see you soon. I hope to meet you soon.
Sure. Adiós, amigo.
Adiós. Bye-bye.